Well, we're just going to wait another 30 seconds. Oh, here we are, 2 o'clock. Well, good
Yeah.
afternoon, everybody. It's Tracy Abbott from Microlink. We're here with our partners, the wonderful ladies from Bodyline, and happy International Women's Day to us all.
Yeah.
And we're here to talk about the menopause, which is something that women of a certain age are all very familiar with. But I think I'm quite true in saying that very few people know a lot about it, myself included. And we've got some experts on the panel that are going to really inform us and help us to move forward in the world of work. So if I could ask people to do introductions, if I could start with you, Sally, or Louise, perhaps.
Yes, I'm happy to start. So I'm the client relationship manager for Bodyline. So I work with organisations, talking to them about how to support women through perimenopause and menopause, and offering a clinical solution as a benefit to that organisation.
Thank you. Sally?
Hi, I'm Sally Turner. I'm MD and founder of Bodyline Medical Wellness Group. We started our journey in medical weight health programs, and we pivoted into menopause when we saw the correlation between weight and the fact that people were struggling getting successful journeys, sort of like in the NHS. So and we look to help corporates and occupational health companies to actually look at how we personalise these journeys for women who don't have a successful journey in menopause. And we're all individual at the end of the day. And, you know, what we then provide is an individualised service in order to get a good outcome for patients.
Wonderful.
So that's what we do. So that's
Thank
what
you,
I do.
Sally. But fabulous. Bernie?
Hi, so I'm Bernie Murphy. I'm the registered nurse manager at Bodyline. I am also the lead nurse clinician, so I head over all the clinical services. I've been responsible for developing and embedding the menopause service within the company, and training of our other nurses into the service as well.
Excellent. And last but definitely not least, Helen.
Hello, everyone. I work for Microlink. I've been there for my whole life, 25 years, out from birth, practically. I'm the client services director, so I look after all of our corporate clients. So hello to any of those that I know on the participants here. And yeah, really looking forward to being part of this webinar.
So I wanted to start, if we may, Louise, can you tell us what is the menopause? Is it just the menopause? You mentioned perimenopause before.
Yeah,
Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so menopause is the general term that everybody uses, but actually perimenopause can start really as early as 30, more likely later in life, but there has been instances where it can start as early as 30. There's lots of different factors, which I'm sure Bernie will talk you through that in a bit later. But menopause is actually one day. And that's the day when you celebrate 1 year of not having a period.
Okay.
And then you go into postmenopause. The average age in the UK is 51 when this happens. But as Sally said earlier, you know, every woman's journey through perimenopause, menopause is different. Some people may have very limited symptoms, and some will have very extreme symptoms. And this is why we have developed the program we have, where we actually look at your blood profiling to see where your hormones are and how we can actually bespoke a service to you. But to go through some of the more technical aspects, the clinical aspects, Bernie, do you want to just kind of put the background on that?
Yeah, so I think the whole menopause journey obviously starts really when a woman starts her periods. That's when a woman's body becomes used to that level of hormones. And as Louise says, from the age of usually around 35, sometimes it can be as early as 30. That's when a woman technically enters into the perimenopause, as there's a gradual reduction in the production of those natural hormones that a woman's body becomes dependent on to function. So that perimenopause begins at any time when a woman first starts to experience any kinds of menopausal symptoms. And for a lot of women, the perimenopause is the most difficult part. By the time women reach the menopause, their bodies actually become used to the reduction in the hormones, and sometimes can be a little bit easier. So what we've found is that a lot of women have found the beginning of that menopause journey the most difficult. And for others,
and that could be from 35-ish
Yeah,
onwards.
I think.
Wow.
I think an important point on this is perimenopause is not really treated very well by the NHS, and a lot of the perimenopause symptoms get misdiagnosed into mental health, anxiety,
Oh, wow.
and those types of areas. So what we find is that this is where if you've got somebody who is struggling with those types of things, if they're potentially within that 30 age bracket, quite often it can be perimenopause, but it's being misdiagnosed as something else.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that, I'll be honest.
Yeah. So we see a lot of women. We see a lot of women in this perimenopause. Now, the NHS doesn't really start to treat people until 45 plus. So you've got this huge gap.
You've got
where
basically a
people
decade, perhaps, of suffering.
Yeah, and people are really struggling because it can be quite severe for some people, and it's just getting misdiagnosed as I'm not sleeping, anxiety, depression. It might be joint pain, it might be all of those types of things, but nobody's really connecting the dots on it. And this is why we say when we look at doing an audit or we look at that, we would actually include, you can do a symptom checker, and you can quite easily from that and blood say that's actually perimenopause, and it's a light bulb for a lot of women going, oh my god,
I can imagine.
It is. So these are things that when people are struggling, it's actually connecting the dots holistically.
Helen, what have you found? I mean, you've got quite a few staff that have worked with you for a number of years as well. Do you find within the female staff that that this isn't talked about? People don't know about perimenopause?
I think one of the things that struck me is how much the person themselves doesn't know what's going on, and it's this kind of feeling of, am I going crazy? That's the overriding, the anxiety, the brain fog, suddenly inability to concentrate, to do things that came absolutely naturally, for that person up to that point, and then suddenly you really start doubting yourself, and then your confidence takes a dip. And then I guess mental health becomes entwined in it in such a way that it becomes really difficult to separate for people. And I think for my personal experience, it needed somebody apart from the situation to say, do you think this could be the menopause? Because the person themselves,
isn't that interesting,
was just thinking there's something seriously wrong with me here. I don't know what it is. I'm just not coping.
I don't think society particularly helps. I mean, Louise, there's the sort of common themes of bloody hell, you're too emotional, you must be on the blob. Sorry, that's a bit of a coarse phrase, but that's what I heard growing up, when I was going through periods. And certainly I'm sure that a lot of women going through the perimenopause must have similar kind of biases.
Unfortunately, there's still it's getting better. Education is getting better, and education in the workplace is certainly getting better, and training of managers. But there's still some stigma around it. And what we need to do is also think about our male colleagues in this,
I was just about to say that.
Support.
Louise,
it's not just a female thing, it's all encompassing in the workplace.
Do you find that these kind of like awareness raising sessions and any kind of information sessions you do are largely attended by women though, and not necessarily by male?
It's improving. I think it's
colleagues.
improving with men because it is largely women, but it is opening up because it is opening up because men actually, we did a specialist session for a lot of male entrepreneurs, didn't we, Louise? Where
interesting.
And they said, look, we want to do this because we have partners and we understand what the impact is. The impact is not just in the workplace, the impact is also on us. And we want to be informed of what it is that we can actually do. But I think an interesting one of the, we're on new solution design here, aren't we? Of we know how to treat patients, but how you roll it out into a workplace is evolving. And because I think one of the challenges is that a woman doesn't necessarily want to be labelled with menopause. It
feels aging. I don't know about you, but I suddenly feel like I've gone into a non-sexual phase, which isn't.
And I think we need to sort of like open up the language to say, we should have female health checks, and those female health checks identify that stage of life that they're at and can actually put that support in. So I think that it's about how we use the language, and as we evolve with these solutions into workplaces, and looking at what the best way is to do that, because what you want women to engage, because if we can, the treatment journeys are from just holistic, it might be supplementation, it might be no medication, right to the other end of they absolutely do need some type of medical intervention because the holistic's not working. So, but it's how you engage that and how you deliver that into an organization, isn't it? So that you can get that engagement, say, you know what, let's do some female health checks from the age of 30. We can then do an audit to say, right, you've got X% of people in perimenopause, you've got X% of people here, you've got X% of people who are struggling. And you can then design the solution around what that data is. Because otherwise, just letting it, because very often women don't connect the dots and are not connecting the dots, the fact that I'm really struggling mentally here with this particular thing. They're not necessarily connecting the dots to the fact that they might have a UTI. My journey into this was constant UTIs. Why am I getting constant UTIs?
That's quite a common thing, isn't it? The urinary tract infections.
Really common. But you don't necessarily link that to and it took my journey 2 years in order to link one with the other. So it's different for everybody, but because we understand the whole piece, we can actually look at a symptom checker of a patient and say potentially.
Okay, so why you, Sally? Why you, Louise? Why not the NHS? I mean, crikey, they're there. Why aren't they doing it? You get hormone tabs. What more do we want?
So I mean, we all adore the NHS. They do a fantastic job in so many ways.
They do.
But not everybody can be an expert on every subject. And your GP, it can be a bit of a postcode lottery as to whether your GP has actually decided to take that extra training on, or that surgery has decided to bring somebody in who's got that menopause expertise.
Is it not standard training in the menopause for GPs?
Well,
it's not.
From
it's a 15-minute
from
session.
our own doctors, they do get some training. It's about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yum.
And
okay. Half the population, 10 minutes. That's fabulous.
The thing is as well, it's not just about prescribing a drug. Exactly. If you go to see your doctor about the menopause, you get a 15-minute slot, and obviously the push to see the next patient. Part of getting the journey right with men and women on the hormone journey is having the time to listen. And for a lot of people, it's making them, in some ways, I suppose it's a bit like a counselling session, that they're actually not going nuts. They're not, they're not going crazy. This is part of, hormonal changes that are causing all these things. And quite often it leads on to discussions around their marriage, their relationship, their work.
Which can all get affected.
Always just fixed overnight by prescribing a medication.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing with that is exactly why the HRC have said this now qualifies under the Equality Act, because this is a long and substantial incident in a woman's life that is likely to last more than 12 months. And actually, when we went up to the Evershed yesterday,
about to say that,
they said about the word substantial, which is interesting in itself, because substantial doesn't mean, I think of substantial as in a substantial meal is like meat and veg and greens and a pudding and a starter and beer. But actually, they just mean anything that's more than less.
Yeah, absolutely.
For them, it could just mean a packet of crisps.
It's
so the difference is really quite stark. And that came across really well yesterday. And I think from what you're saying, one of the questions I wanted to see, I don't know, as a day, if we could have just one of the questions so the audience can have a look on the kind of numbers, I think is the first one we're looking at.
I think
How many women are leaving their jobs, do you think? So if you can just sort of put a note in there and have a little think about how many people you think that go through the menopause or the perimenopause that then leave work because they can't cope, either because they know what's going on, or more likely, according to these lovely people here, they don't know.
And while
So
you're
we've
doing that, Trace, didn't we also get told that there was the first legal case coming
oh
through?
yeah, two coming through.
For
So this
women with the
is
menopause.
on the board. Yeah. So if we give it another 20 seconds, something
I think
like that.
one of the other important things about the NHS, which are brilliant at what I consider to be critical care and things like that, when we're talking about personalisation of care, those are the bits where, you know, they struggle. But a fundamental thing from an NHS point of view is what dosage and you know what are they effectively prescribing. Now, you know, we look at our you know, the medication.
We've got an even spread across the board there, people.
Oh, interesting.
Well, it's still more people think it's 1 in 6. Louise, how many is it actually?
Actually, it's 1 in 10 women leave their jobs due to menopause.
So it's interesting that people on the call think that more women leave.
Yeah.
That probably says more about the attitudes and how they found it when they've been at work themselves. Or maybe it's just undisclosed when people leave that that's why they're leaving.
Yes.
I mean, you hear a lot of women in their 50s leaving the workforce because carer responsibilities or whatever it might be. But it's probably chiming with this as well.
You can imagine how many horror stories we've heard with some of our patients, and you know, we have just, you know, looking back, there was one lady who was in finance, very senior, just could not get through those financial exams that they have to do repeatedly.
Oh, interesting.
And very, very senior, and you know, had to leave that because she just, you know, she wasn't being treated with HRT. She could not cope with it at all. And it was just something as simple as that. In order to stay in that industry, she had to, you know, pass those exams, and you know, she just couldn't get there with it. And so we've you know, we've got a lot of horror stories there, haven't we, Bernie, of women, you know, and not just but having to change their lives because they've not really had the effective treatment that was needed for them. And in some cases, it's not a lot. You know, in order to make that change and that so that they can be more productive, be more back to themselves. People say to us, back to themselves. I feel like I did. And so it's you know, that's effectively, then we look at that personalization with that.
We've got a comment in the chat there saying, personal experience, have waited over 2 years for the 10-minute chat. What other channels exist for support and assistance?
Wow.
And this is where I just want to do a deep dive, because you guys do offer very different support and assistance than is available in the NHS, don't you?
Yeah.
Which I think is a real key factor here, and one of the reasons why Microlink have always been solution focused. And you know, we need to get to a solution. So, and this is why Bodyline and we've really kind of jived with this. So what is it that you guys do that's different from the NHS?
So we would look at whoever that you know, that client is. We would look at those bespoke solutions for what they want for their organization. And as I said to you before, you know, it may well be, how do you want to engage the workforce into this? What does it look like? Does it look like that you do an on-site event? Does it look like something that we go in and as I say, do female
what
health?
about on a personal level? This is about a personal level. What can you do for the woman?
So sorry, the process, I mean, I'll let Louise talk through the you know, the patient process.
Okay, so basically, as the employee engages with us, we go through a detailed symptom checker and a medical history that is sent out to them so they can do it in the comfort of their own home. We actually run a remote telehealth platform. So you will speak to one of the nurses face to face like this today. But you can do that in the comfort of your own home. We send out a kit which gives a blood profiling kit, really simple to use. We've got the latest technology to be able to do that. Tracy, you did it. I was your blood buddy on Monday, wasn't I?
Yeah,
so we
you
did
were,
that.
and it was fabulous.
Pretty easy to use. And then once we get the results back from the lab, Bernie and her team will, you'll have a consultation with them. The first consultation, about an hour, but as Bernie says, it's really in depth, and we go through all your symptom checker, we go through your medical history, and from there you obviously get to express what your feelings are, and Bernie and her team will then obviously recommend and prescribe based on that. We do then a follow-up call after a month just to see how you're getting on, and then every quarter there's a check-in with your nurse. Obviously we've got a helpline that you can contact us at any point. If you're distressed, we can put you obviously into distress, or just questions, or any of it. We can put you back in touch with your nurse at any point during, you know, that 12 months.
What about the mental health side? Sorry, Louise, the mental health side with this. So do you support on that as well? Is that something that you recommend people get coping strategies alongside, or?
Yeah.
Well, Bernie can explain that to you, I think.
So after the initial consultation, obviously the mental health symptoms that can be induced by the menopause are assessed, and we ask the client to sort of score them on a scale of 1 to 10 for the severity. They also complete a wellness questionnaire, which looks at more broader aspects of mental health. So, you know, not just symptoms, direct symptoms of the menopause, but how they feel about their confidence, their self-esteem, if it's affecting their relationship. And we readdress that on the quarterly reviews. We'll then offer, you know, as I say, menopause isn't just fixed by the medication alone. So it's other supportive strategies, you know, looking at their exercise, looking at their coping strategies that we can suggest of, you know, what they do in their social life, as I say, exercise, other things that you can do to make a difference, looking at any, you know, work pressures, differences that we can make to help, you know, advice we can give around their relationship that can all have a positive effect on improving their mental health.
Yeah, and on some of these patient journeys, you know, it may well be that some people need more support than others. So, you know, if we see something that, you know, where somebody is really, really struggling, we will probably then, they may go on a patient journey that we see them every month as opposed to once every quarter.
Right, because it's a personal thing, right?
Yeah,
it's an individual personal thing.
It is
individual, and if we also thought that it was something out of the realms of the menopause care, we would also as well liaise with their GP for, you know, additional mental health support.
Yeah,
if that's not already being offered by the GP.
Can I ask then, Louise, because I was quite shocked when I was going through this because I wanted to try it and see what it's about. I mean, we get that one size fits all little sticky that some people stick on their bum, some people stick on their bellies. But, you know, I mean, if you look at the difference between the size of Sally and myself, for example, we're like, you could fit another person in between to make two of you, couldn't it, from me? So, you know, if we're on the same medication from the doctor, surely that's not being either too much for you and not enough for me. That personalized thing's got to be really important, surely.
It's absolutely the fundamental of what we do. And how can one patch, exactly that, do the same job for you than it does for me?
Unless you put them over our mouths.
We could try. I don't think it's going to work though. They're small patches. Really like that size. But it's important. And I mean, the thing is, you do a symptom checker, you do a health thing, you share what your medical, because I take lots of different things for diabetes and heart conditions and all the rest of it. But some of the symptoms absolutely shocked me, Louise. Because I kind of thought, oh well, we all know it's moods, it's lack of sexual appetite. Sometimes it's hot flushes, not being able to sleep. I thought that was it. But there's a bloody host of them.
Well,
Can you share some of them?
Yeah, everyone talks about the 48 symptoms. There is a lot more than 48.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, it's such a personalized thing to you, such a unique thing to you. What I experience is completely different from what somebody else with.
What are the top line ones though? Because some of them,
I
like
think
rheumatoid arthritis
the top
pains.
5, I think most people know, but it can be things like joint pain that you might not, you know, for me, it was my elbows that hurt all the time. Weird, but true.
Yeah.
So, you know, tiredness, absolute fatigue that you don't know what to do with yourself. Go to bed and then you've got insomnia. The hot flushes, the lack of confidence, unable to concentrate, lack of motivation, urgency to go for a wee, you know.
That's a lot of that.
I think vast array of symptoms.
From clinical experience as well, I think it's some of the symptoms that women won't necessarily attribute to the menopause or are less likely to want to discuss because they see it more as more personal. So things like pain during intercourse, you know, vaginal dryness, recurrent urine infections, that they're not necessarily attributing to the fact that it's the hormones are depleting that are causing these things, and they just tend to live with them and put up with it because who wants to go to the doctor?
Okay, I'm going to ask, Bernie, I'm going to have to ask, dry fanny? Seriously?
Yeah, and it's very, very common. And it's, you know, it's the vaginal dryness that will then quite often cause pain in intercourse that then causes divorce.
Oh, nice.
And then causes marriage problems.
Already. Unbelievable. Is that
then you mentioned, Sally, you mentioned topical estrogen, vaginal estrogen. Now, I mean, I heard that on Radio 4 for the first time about 6 weeks ago, and I thought, can you go and buy it from a chemist? Does it have to be prescribed?
Well,
do you do it? I mean,
we do it, and you can get it over the counter now, I believe, but it's not in all chemists. So I've been in a couple of chemists, and they go, no, that has to be prescribed. So the rules aren't that, you know, that's not quite rolled out within that. But you can get it, but there are different dosages. So you know, if obviously what we look at is we look at that and we would adjust the dosage.
Well, you have a litmus test to see how. Oh, I'm sorry,
Tracy.
lady. How wet somebody? I'm sorry. It's a question I wanted to know.
So we would obviously work out with the patient of what dosage we think potentially, you know, we would start with them, because there are different versions of. There's not just one, and there are different ones. So, you know, interestingly, I'm on quite a high dose. Some people will be on a little bit of a lower dose, and this is really when we look at personalization. Because my issue was because I had UTI, so clearly I've got a bigger issue than maybe somebody else has. But
has it relieved the UTIs out of interest? Because they are absolutely debilitating.
I haven't had one since.
A lot of our clients are the same, Sally, aren't they?
Wow.
We've got a young woman who she's about 36 and she's lived with UTI, chronic UTI, for like the last 3 or 4 years on the current antibiotics, and then the antibiotics themselves invoke loads of side effects. And exactly the same. She just can't live without them now. It's a absolute game changer.
The bit that I'm struggling with this is how that we as women know that this might even be what we're going through. Do you know what I mean? How do we begin that journey?
It's about it's women talking about it and getting it out there, isn't it? And taking the taboo out of the subject, so that, you know, it's not all just about hot flushes or night sweats, because there's so much more to the menopause. And it's, you know, I think the starting point is it getting out there, talking about it in workforces, talking about it in the coffee shop. Because unless people know that, you know, your UTI can actually be down to a hormone change.
Shall we try another question? Azadeh, could you put another question up for us, please? Let's see which one it is. Surprise. How many women
we've got that one.
We've done that one. We've had that one. We know the answer to that one. Is there another one?
Yeah,
we've got there.
What percentage say women say symptoms have a negative impact on their work performance? 90%, 60%, or 80%?
Can you say that one again as well, Helen, please?
What percentage say women say symptoms? Why do I say women? What percentage say symptoms have a negative effect on their work performance? 90%, 60%, or 80%?
So if you want to have a think about that, so percentage, it's a big question.
Yeah. So we were talking about symptoms before, weren't we? So
Yeah.
one of those ones which is not really obvious but is
Uh,
itchy skin. So
Could you use the
because
same vaginal thing on your skin that you get in the...
not really, but an
You need
example of that.
buckets of it.
Because I've got a really dry forehead, you know, I'm just saying.
We talk about because we have, as women, estrogen receptors all over our body. We have significantly more estrogen receptors than men because we reproduce. It's if you actually look at the science of that, if the hormone around that receptor is fluctuating, depending on where that receptor is, we have receptors in our bowel, so people get elements like IBS, all of those types of things. So you
Good God.
imagine that the estrogen receptors, because we have so many of them, and the hormone is fluctuating, of course you're going to get a symptom or a reaction to it. The severity of that would depend on the fluctuation.
Yeah.
So, and this
So
is
maybe
why
you should have estrogen shower gel.
well,
Just
in real terms, the research behind estrogen, you know, is developing, and the link with Alzheimer's and all of these types of things. We are going to see the science develop in this area because there are a lot of female entrepreneurs now in healthcare saying, actually, it's been underserved, this area of research. Women.
This area of the population, not just this area of research. It's this massive area of the population, and it's. I think Davina McCall did a good service in that initial kind of television, and then actually one of the people that I was dealing with, it was watching that they thought, hang on a minute, you know, maybe this is me. And I think much more media awareness needs to be done, doesn't it? There's so much more awareness raising, but it's incredibly difficult for me to understand how this has happened. How can this is something that affects all of us?
Yes, it
half
is.
the population, and yet.
Oh, Helen, listen, you work in a company that works with assistive tech. How many people have got a disability in their working life? 73%, yeah? And yet you've got companies that haven't got a clue and individuals that don't know there's stuff out there to help them get through it. This is what we're trying to do here, though, is use companies like Bodyline to raise that awareness.
But I do think, you know, it's a you know, I'm privileged, and I think we're all privileged to be in the space that we are innovating in this space. And this is when we talk about, you know, looking at how we make those journeys better. I mean, certainly we have, you know, we've designed and evolved our patient journeys, haven't we, Bernie, on, you know, of getting them right, getting those types of results and learning, and you know, and it's about innovation, isn't it, of making this better, making it more accessible. And really, when we talk about, you know, it needs to, for me, around health checks and things like that, of that incorporation of those types of things in, because employers, you know, need to have a look at how they can better that, because in the end, the return on investment is a no-brainer. Really.
It's a no-brainer. It's similar to supporting disability. It's an absolute no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer, and you know, it actually, in some cases, it, you know, we can get that journey. You know, we can make those changes quite quickly. You know, when they're fundamentally life-changing. To, you know, if you imagine a woman having 6 or 7 UTIs a year as opposed to having none, and just overlay that with her productivity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was speaking to women. They hadn't left their house. The anxiety was crippling. So how long does it, when you start on this journey, how long does it take to start feeling better, in layman's terms, do you think? It's completely personal?
It's personal. Some people will start to notice an effect within the first 1 or 2 weeks. You'll probably get some benefit in the first 5 to 6 weeks, because that's sort of how long it takes for the drug to reach its maximum effect of that titration. But obviously we start low, and then we will go higher based on the response. So within 5 to 6 weeks you'll notice some effect, and then, you know, if we're not getting amazing results, we'd then look at a dose titration. But you know, pretty quickly.
So what was the answer to that question then, Trace? or as a day we've got the percentage?
The actual answer is 90%.
So nearly all of us,
Yes.
nearly all of us, our productivity
Wow.
is affected.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet workplaces and women, and you know, this is not a topic, this is a topic that needs to be explored. How much do you think the addition into the sort of recognition with this becoming part of the Equality Act is going to help this campaign, help kind of push this forward?
I certainly hope it does. I mean, and there's two thoughts on this. Obviously, as we've talked about, educational training, making reasonable workplace adjustments. So you fan, you cool gel, you this, you that. Great, it's all a start. But actually, unless you get down to the root cause, i.e. somebody's hormones, we're not actually going to make that much difference. So, you know, all these other things are brilliant, you know, flexibility at work, all those
Yep.
kind of things are a really great step in the right direction. But actually, if somebody had a bad back, they'd go to Op Health and they'd be sent to see a physiotherapist, right? So if somebody's struggling with menopause, why don't we put them in front of a specialist to help them? And for me, I think it's as simple as that, really. You know, what we've just said is 1 in 10 women leave their job. Well, the cost of that, well, for the woman herself leaving, I mean, it's devastating. You're at the prime of your career. You've got all this knowledge, and you feel that you can't express yourself, and your confidence goes. But from an employer's point of view, the cost of replacing that talent, it's not just the recruitment cost, is it? It's everything else. It's your reputation as a company. You know, they say an average is it's about 30,000. Well, coming back from an ex-recruitment background, I can guarantee it's probably more than that. It's probably about 60,000 to replace that person.
Yeah,
So
training.
At least.
when you actually
At
look
least.
at the business risk and business cost, it's astronomical.
And
And
when do
another
you
thing what's not recorded is a lot of women are too ashamed to say they're taking a day off because of menopause. They will come up with something else.
Well, interestingly now, so under this addition to the Equality Act, really, companies should start recording menopause leave differently and separately to normal leave. And that's a really critical point.
They
that
have to do
companies
it under
often miss.
disability leave anyway.
They should,
Yes.
but let's be honest, not every company does record disability leave
That's
differently.
true.
And the policies that companies have, and this is learning that Tracy and I sort of had reinforced with the legal presentation we did in Manchester Tuesday, which is you've got an HR policy, right? The HR policy is this policy will trigger after X number of days sick. That is where companies are falling down, because for the individual, it doesn't apply to them. If you've hired somebody with a disability, you've got a woman going through the menopause, their sick days may be more, and you cannot discriminate and not flex around that. You know, it's where a lot of these
Okay,
employment tribunals come from.
though, devil's advocate, if you're looking at this as a business, as your automatic reaction just to go, tell you what, solve all that, won't hire any bloody women. Problem solved.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could stop hiring women, you could stop hiring anyone of different races, of different religions.
They try.
You can stop hiring. Yeah, I mean, you can stop hiring people with disabilities, but then you kind of got a really narrow talent pool to look at there, quite frankly, and it's not going to get your organisation going any further.
We've got a question here. I don't know, Bernie, if you can help, but we mentioned this before, but because of the strength and availability of the types of medication discussed, are there any natural remedies out there that may help and is immediately available?
There's a whole host of supplements that we would support depending on the symptoms. The initial things that have an overall health benefit that if people aren't using that, I would recommend would be things like vitamin B12, vitamin D, magnesium. Magnesium.
I notice you haven't mentioned red wine in that list.
Only on a Friday.
Always there.
So magnesium is a key supplement in the menopause. One of the most common symptoms of menopause is sleep disturbance, and women partly because they struggle to to switch off. You know, they've got sort of brain overload, and sometimes it's the hot sweats that disturb their sleep. But magnesium is a great sleep enhancer.
Isn't that supposed to be soft glowing? Wasn't it horses sweat, men perspire, and ladies glow?
That was
That was always the phrase
Whatever.
my mum said.
I don't
So
think
it's
that's how
obviously
they
the
feel.
night glows rather than the night sweats, perhaps.
Interestingly, when we do the blood profiling, we automatically include those elements into the blood profiling, and interestingly, at least 50% fall below the normal threshold of where they should be.
Oh, interesting.
So
Interesting.
So it is a big issue with you know, those type of things. So of course we would treat it. Not all the answers are down a medicated route. You know, we can actually get results just from a non-medication route, and that's how that would evolve on that. But
the key does seem to be that blood test, doesn't it?
well, we
seeing
use it.
what's there and what's going on in your life.
The NHS don't do blood profiling, but we find it very useful in our patient journey, because it doesn't tell you everything, but it gives you a very good idea alongside the symptom checker. I think that my other element was back to your point, Helen, is how do we do this in organisations? Well, it's really about, it's not necessarily just about the menopause, but it's about what does that health check look like, and you can then put those other elements in it. So I think that we'll see organisation more and more coming to look at building health and proactive health, female health solutions into their employee journey, because why wouldn't you? Because those are different points in their life, aren't they? So, you know, for us, it's you know, perimenopause. You know, some women struggle with this all the way through right until, you know, we have women on hormone treatments who are up in late 60s, 70s, because the GPs because the GPs have taken them off it. And you know, there's absolutely no basis for that. So, you know, when women are saying, I can't, you know, why would I come off it? Because I can't function.
What do you think though? Can I just ask quickly, because there's a big thing about this cancer, the effect of hormone therapies, and you know, there's a lot of myths out there, isn't there? There are some myths out there around this, and what would you say about that? You know, about encouraging women to come forward and get this isn't dangerous, is it?
No, and the data, when we look into that, the data that was originally drawn from that study was, you know, it was on older women. We're using completely different medications now. We're using body identical medications, and when you look back on it, it was just so badly reported. And the actual sample, it just doesn't relate to what we do now. So it is completely, as long as it's prescribed with a qualified clinician, it is completely safe in that environment. And you know, we will, from a safety perspective, we look at people's history so that there wouldn't be any element of risk in that. So, you know, and this is why.
So really, that is a big old myth. I mean, it's an old. How did that just become permeated into everybody's? You know, you literally had HRT linked with cancer in the same sentence almost.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
there's two other aspects to add to the safety. Obviously we do naturally produce progesterone, but the natural role of progesterone is to protect the body alongside against the estrogen. So we would always prescribe, if a woman is taking estrogen, they'll be prescribed progesterone, because that is the protector for the body. And the other thing is the other safety element is we would never prescribe a dose where a woman's symptoms don't show that they need them. So that we'll always start low, so we'll maintain them on the lowest dose that's treating those symptoms, whereas quite often with your doctor, they'll just give you a dose.
It's a bit like antidepressants. It's a bit of a nuclear bomb effect, you know.
More than what you actually need.
And the other thing is that there's, you know, the new data, the data is showing that actually HRT can help with lots of other things. You know, it's heart health, it's osteoporosis, it's dementia. So, you know, if anything, it's a positive.
Yeah.
So
Can
long
I
as it's
ask,
prescribed
because
safely.
sorry, Louise, one of the symptoms that I've heard about and I read in the list is the kind of the menopause brain fog, which is almost like an acquired autism. And we do a lot with people with autism and all sorts of neurodivergence. That surely is a double whammy for women. How do they, I mean, is there anything that minimizes that?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence around ADHD, autism, and the impact of menopause.
Oh, really?
And that it's significantly increased.
Oh,
right.
There's I've got quite a lot of data around that, because we actually support a service which does ADHD diagnosis and treatment, and we've been collating this information together because there's quite a crossover with menopause. So we've got quite a lot of information on that, that those are exacerbated. So it's it's having a look at that in those specific areas as well. And as we improve on our information and we've got more education around it and we've got more patient data, this is coming to light, really, that there is a cluster there where those symptoms can be exacerbated.
wow.
I mean, that can't be fun at all. So, I mean, from as a panel's point of view, what are the sort of the things that people need to be looking out for? Do we keep a diary on these sort of things so we notice for I don't know, for a 6-month period that we're doing XYZ or ABC and it's not working for us or things have changed? Is that the best way to start a conversation with you guys, or talking to our doctors? What do we do?
Yeah, so I mean, how we track that, because sometimes women, we forget how bad we were, and then because sometimes we just get on with it. So within our patient journey, what we do is we have this checker every 3 months, so we can actually see the progress of all of those symptoms and how that outcome, because we have to track outcomes. We can't just go, how do we actually then, know whether we're successful or not on these outcomes, and how do we use that data? So we would very much do that. But I think that, for women on the start of the journey, yes, it's actually recording down what those issues are. But for the start of the journey depends on, obviously coming through yourselves, and then looking at what that solution is, and how we engage with those clients.
I think once a woman, I mean, because this is something that, for those on the call, that we are going to add into our array of solutions, and that we are doing because we think it's really important. It's something that we're really passionate about. It's got massive overlap with the kind of work that we do with organisations. So this is going to be a service that is available through Microlink. I think once a woman, I think one of the things to get over is getting women to come forward. I think, in my experience, and I don't know if this drives with you, women there gets to a point where they are desperate for help. They really do want to get that help, but there's the other side of it, which is they don't know what they don't know to.
Well, exactly that. Exactly what they don't know, which is why the educational piece is good. And we're more than happy to go and talk to companies and go through this in more detail with individual organisations to show people what to look out for, and give that, the right messaging. But fundamentally, it's getting to the root cause. I mean, 1 in 7 women go to the doctors. That's right. 1 in 7 women go 7 times to the doctors to actually get what they need. And 40% of those women don't get anything at all.
Yeah.
So this is why they've got to start speaking up to people like Microlink and saying, where can you signpost me to?
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
A simple solution might be for an organisation to say, look, do you know what? We're going to give you a perk, and we do a female health check to everybody, all females over the age of 30. You could then, those women will engage with you on that basis, and we can then start conversation. So, the female health check, we send a wellness check, we send out the blood panel, we have a look, and we can do it's not menopause focused, but from that we can then identify those women who are in that space. And that might be a simple way to do it. So let's just do a health check. We'll take your BP and we look at it holistically. Then we can hone into those women that go, I'm really struggling here. Because if you ask that question to them directly, that might not be obvious that it is within that. And that's a proactive way. And I think these things should really be proactive as opposed to being reactive.
Absolutely. It's far cheaper for a business to do it proactively as well.
And for that, it's about, for a woman over a certain age and you get a health check, well, you wouldn't not engage with that, would you?
Exactly. So can we have another question, Azadeh? Would that be okay? Let's have a look. How many women aged between 50 and 65 are in the workforce? So have we got any ideas? Is it 4.3 million, 6 million, or 2.5 million?
Is this counting the number that have dropped out because they haven't been supported on their menopause journey and think they're crazy? Because what happens to those women after?
I love it.
What happens to those women after that? Where does their life go?
Well, some really struggle. They get, it leads to divorce. It leads to all sorts of horrific, life-changing scenarios.
None of it's good, is it? Let's be honest.
It's just there's something unfair in this whole thing.
Everything's unfair. I mean, men have andropause, which I'm always delighted to remind our exec at work that they could well be going through the andropause just for a bit of fun. But it's true, it affects men as well, but just not as strongly, I understand.
Because they don't have as many estrogen receptors as women and they don't reproduce. So, fundamentally...
I think their testosterone level drops by 1% a year or something like that, whereas we just fall off a cliff.
Well, look, here we've got a bit of a tie nearly between 6 million and 4.3 million. What's the answer?
It's 4.3 million.
4.3 million. And we're saying 1 in 10 of those are dropping out.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. It's like the unspoken, it's like the secret employment issue, isn't it? I mean,
but nobody, my mum never talked to me, but I don't know about you guys.
Someone do the maths. What's 10% of 4.3 million, for goodness sake?
430,000.
Come on.
10%.
Huge.
430,000.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's huge. And of course, it's underreported, isn't it? It's still underreported because...
Absolutely.
You're not going to say, I've got a problem with my menopause. So
the women may not know themselves, I imagine.
It's just underreported. So, it's about providing those ways that people can engage on different levels and that can actually access those. And I think it's going to be different for different organisations.
One of the trickiest things, I imagine, and I'm going to be really, generic, but if you've got a male line manager as a woman who is, okay, she's become aware, this is a thing, she's suffering, how does she even begin to have that? I mean, how would you even begin to have that conversation? And do you need to, I think, in every organisation as well?
Yeah, and I think that's really around how that organisation is going to engage with, dealing with this and how culturally key that is going to be in that organisation to, put proper, what I consider to be solutions in order to help that retention and help that productivity. So I think it's very difficult. I think that bit comes down to education, Helen, of that, what they expect their line manager to do. And even at that point, that woman still might not even admit it's menopause. So I think it's around giving these solutions around starting off with proactive health, and menopause drops out of that as part of proactive health, so that it's not got that label. So, and also about, we might have a campaign around female health. That client might say, actually at lunchtime, can you all, you know, we do some health checks, we do some BP checks, we do a bit of, you know, we're going to concentrate, it's Female Health Month, and you know, and you engage with people that way. You give people an ability to have a confidential helpline. You know,
we're also going to have challenges, surely, the intersectional piece around somebody who is disabled and has menopause, somebody who's disabled and is maybe Asian, or, you know, comes from Africa.
Presumably it's different culturally, isn't it?
The must be quite a different thing. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes. And it's very different. It is very different culturally. And those are things that we can break those barriers down.
But again, it's communication, isn't it? I mean, all of this that we're talking about here.
Communication. It's about finding the right solution for that organisation, because you could look at anonymized data of a workforce, and what we could do is we could say, this is what your landscape looks like with your female workforce. X% are here, X% are in here. The likelihood that X% need treatment. So you can then design a solution around that.
Yeah.
And it depends on what the culture of that organisation is. You know, what work for one might not work for another, depending on what industry they're in. You know, do they want out on site and, you know, visible, or do they not want visible? So is that something where we do a campaign, you know, to those women that they've got a clinical helpline, you know, and those types of things, and we gather data that way. There's lots of different ways to do this, but we're in this innovative space where we're working these solutions out because
it's at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's at the very beginning. Yeah.
I mean, what we've got that we've done that we will send out with a recording of this is that we've actually developed a grab bag, which includes your services, ladies. You are in our grab bag, but around the menopause. And it's a few things that would mitigate some of the physical discomfort. So it's things like a lumbar support, foot rests, things like heated pads, body pads, that you can place in the small of your back. And I mean, it works for periods, for dysmenorrhea, as well as for menopause and challenges like that. Even like cool packs you can put around your wrists, and what are known as whisper fans that you can actually plug into your laptop, and your IT team doesn't go, oh no, you can't, because oh yes, you can. So it's things like that, and obviously the Bodyline services. And this is why we wanted to do the webinar today, was to really highlight, and I think you've done a great job, all of you, to say this happens to nearly every single woman, impactful at different levels, and really surprising, the numbers that we're talking about. If companies want to keep that IP within the knowledge gained of those individual females, you need to look to doing something like the health awareness or female health awareness, and actually engaging with companies like Bodyline to ensure that you're supporting people fully. I mean, one of the things I've been doing with our CEO the last couple of weeks is talking to National Health Trusts about doing workplace adjustments for everybody. And one of the biggest groups that the NHS have are employer resource groups for menopausal women. They are huge, the biggest attended. So it's a huge problem even within the NHS.
It's huge.
So we're saying this is a solution. We think it's a really good, competent, non-expensive, which is always a challenge for companies. If you feel uncomfortable with the cost, talk to your employee assistance program and get it added in there, because then it's covered and everybody and it works out something stupid like 14p a day for all your women in your office per woman. That is not for everyone, but it's worthwhile doing that. And I mean, Louise, we spoke about before that often what a company will do is take the female on that journey, and then if there's medication that's prescribed, that the actual colleague pays for the medication.
That's right. That's right. So what we try to really encourage is that the employer pays for the blood profiling, and certainly for the first hour consultation, and then the quarterly reviews. But any medication, the employee, at the end of the day, it's the price of a prescription. The employee can pick that up. But if the employer can support them through that journey, fantastic. They're going to
And I
keep,
have
they're
to
going to
say
keep that woman in the workforce.
transformation, the transformation for businesses, it's really impactful, because it's not just, as you mentioned, somebody working for a professional services company, Sally, right at the beginning of the hour, you know, trying to get through exams. And we see that with all the professional services and law firms. Why would you lose a senior partner level woman?
But you're not going to get
supporting her?
exactly that, but you're not going to get that put down to menopause at that stage, are you? So it's about
but we all know now, Sally.
But I think
we
it's
all
also
know.
I think it's also about attraction into companies.
Of course it is.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're looking for a job and you're of my age, and you see that they've got a really strong menopause plan, you know, you're gonna consider that, aren't you?
You are.
Yeah.
But listen, we're at the hour. I just wanted to say thank you so much to Sally, Helen, Bernie and Louise.
Pleasure.
Really fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about working with you guys, because I am a woman of a certain age and we rock.
We do.
So I will get out, all the recordings will go out to people who are able to attend and who weren't.
Please let us know if it's helpful. Please let us know if we should put more of these on. And, you know, I think any help that you can do to raise awareness of this cause and in your individual organisations, let us know, and we can provide maybe a webinar or something further on that.
Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.